The signs have been there for months, but now we finally have the inside story. Caitlin Clark's relationship with the Indiana Fever isn't just strained, it's fractured. And the digital breadcrumbs are leading to one inevitable conclusion. This partnership has an expiration date. What's happening right now in Indianapolis isn't your typical rookie growing pains. This is something deeper, something that's been building beneath the surface while everyone's been focused on stats and highlights. I've been filtering through the noise, following the signals, and what I've uncovered reveals a situation that's far more complex than anyone realized. Hey, I'm Jax Riley, and if you've been following the WNBA metagame like I have, you know that the most important stories aren't always the ones making headlines. Sometimes they're hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to connect the dots. And today we're pulling the thread on one of the biggest untold stories in women's basketball. But before we dive deep into this investigation, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. The stories I uncover don't always stay quiet for long, and you don't want to miss what's coming next in this evolving situation. Now, let's talk about what's really happening between Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, because the temperature of the online conversation suggests something fundamental has shifted in this relationship. The cracks started showing early, and they weren't subtle. When a generational talent like Caitlin Clark publicly voices frustration about how she's being utilized, that's not just feedback, that's a warning sign. "We need to do a better job getting me the ball in transition," she said, adding that's when she's at her best. Those aren't throwaway comments from a rookie adjusting to professional basketball. That's a superstar identifying systemic problems. But the story doesn't end there. What happened next revealed the philosophical gap that's been widening between Clark and the organization. Coach Stephanie White's response was telling: a system designed around two primary ball handlers, supposedly to protect Clark from full-court pressure. On paper, it sounds reasonable. In practice, it meant restriction instead of liberation for someone who built her entire reputation on explosive transition play. Think about that for a moment. You have the most dynamic transition player in women's basketball, someone who can pull up from the logo and create scoring opportunities out of thin air, and your system is designed to limit her touches in the very situations where she dominates? That's not coaching, that's management through fear. So, what's fact and what's speculation? Let's break it down, because the official narrative and the digital reality don't quite align. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges. The injury situation that's been plaguing Clark isn't just bad luck, it's a symptom of deeper organizational issues. When she was visibly in pain from a groin injury during a game, holding back tears, fans expected concern, maybe even a formal update about their franchise player's condition. Instead, Coach White brushed it off, telling reporters that Clark was just feeling a little something. That phrase, "a little something," became a lightning rod in WNBA circles. You don't minimize your superstar's pain like that unless there's a disconnect between what the organization values and what the player represents. Now, let me be transparent here. We're entering rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but the digital signals point to a growing frustration that goes beyond basketball philosophy. Sources close to the situation, and I'm being careful with language here because these conversations happen in private, suggest that Clark feels undervalued, not just tactically, but organizationally. Think about it from her perspective. She's generating unprecedented revenue for the franchise. Her jersey sales, ticket sales, TV ratings, she's not just a player, she's a profit center. Yet the organizational response has been to manage her rather than empower her. When a generational talent starts feeling like property instead of a partner, agents start making moves. The timeline here is crucial, and this is where connecting the dots becomes essential. The WNBA Players Association opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement in October 2024. That means everything is up for negotiation. Player movement, free agency restrictions, salary structures, the whole framework. And Kane isn't waiting until 2028 when Clark's rookie contract expires. She's laying groundwork now. What does that actually mean? Well, if you've been following the broader context, nearly 87.5% of projected 2025 WNBA All-Stars will become unrestricted free agents in 2026. That's not just a statistical anomaly, that's a complete reshuffling of league power dynamics. And when that chaos hits, Clark's situation becomes the template other players will follow. I've been filtering through the noise, and the signals point to something unprecedented. Kane isn't just representing Clark, she's using Clark's profile to advocate for systemic change in the way the league treats its stars. The Indiana situation becomes a case study in what happens when organizations don't adapt to player empowerment. But the story doesn't end there, because what's happening in Indianapolis is bigger than one player-team relationship. This is about the evolution of the WNBA from a development league to a legitimate professional sports enterprise. And in that evolution, players like Clark aren't just competing for championships, they're competing for control of their narratives. The fracture between Clark and Indiana represents something fundamental about the league's growth trajectory. Traditional franchises that operate with old-school mentalities are going to struggle with new generation superstars who understand their value and expect to be treated accordingly. Clark didn't come to the WNBA to be managed. She came to lead, to dominate, and to shape the future of women's basketball. Now let's talk about what this really means for the immediate future. Clark is contractually bound to Indiana until 2028. But contracts are just paper when relationships deteriorate. Smart agents find ways to create leverage, even in seemingly powerless situations. The CBA negotiations provide that leverage. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges about how these negotiations are unfolding. Kane isn't just advocating for better salaries or working conditions. She's pushing for structural changes that would give players more autonomy over their careers. And Clark's situation in Indiana becomes Exhibit A for why those changes are necessary. The evidence is mounting that this isn't sustainable long-term. When your franchise player is publicly questioning system decisions, when injury management becomes a source of controversy, when agents are making strategic appearances at competitor venues, those aren't random events. They're coordinated pressure points designed to create change. That brings us to the inevitable question, what happens next? Because the current trajectory isn't leading toward resolution, it's leading toward confrontation. The 2026 free agency bonanza that's coming will reshape the entire league landscape, but Clark's situation will be the blueprint other players follow. If Kane can successfully create early movement opportunities through CBA leverage, if she can demonstrate that player empowerment trumps organizational control, then 2026 becomes less about individual signings and more about a fundamental power shift. Here's what I think is really happening, and this is where the investigation gets speculative but compelling. Clark's camp is using her Indiana experience as a negotiating tool in the broader CBA discussions. Every publicized frustration, every injury controversy, every strategic photo opportunity becomes evidence that the current system doesn't serve elite players effectively. The genius of this approach is that it's not about forcing an immediate trade, it's about building a case for systematic change that benefits all players. Clark becomes the face of player empowerment not because she's demanding special treatment, but because her situation illustrates problems that affect everyone. But here's the part that should worry Indiana fans. This strategy only works if Clark's value continues to grow while her organizational satisfaction declines. And based on everything we're seeing, that's exactly what's happening. The recent exhibition game at Iowa, where Clark drained that incredible 36-foot three-pointer from beyond her Memorial Court marking, wasn't just a homecoming moment, it was a reminder of what she represents beyond Indiana. When she turned toward the crowd with that confident smile, when the arena erupted for someone who's technically a visitor now, that was powerful imagery. Official sources won't tell you this, but the symbolism was intentional. Clark playing injured, still delivering magic in a venue where she's celebrated unconditionally. That's a stark contrast to the management-focused approach she's experiencing in Indianapolis. So what's fact and what's speculation? Let's break it down one more time because the line between reality and rumor gets blurry in situations like this. What we know for certain: Clark has expressed public frustration with her utilization, injury management has been controversial, her agent was visible during strategic interactions with competitor players, and the CBA negotiations are creating opportunities for systematic change. What we suspect but can't confirm: the Indiana relationship is beyond repair. Kane is using Clark's situation as leverage in broader negotiations, and the 2026 free agency wave will be influenced by precedents being set right now. The temperature of the online conversation suggests that fans are starting to understand what's happening. The engagement around Clark-related content that hints at organizational problems consistently outperforms standard game highlights or statistical analysis. People sense something is building. That brings us to the inevitable question that's driving all this speculation. Can this relationship be salvaged? And honestly, based on everything I've uncovered, the answer depends on whether Indiana is willing to fundamentally change how they approach their superstar. Player empowerment isn't just a buzzword in modern professional sports, it's a reality that organizations either embrace or get left behind by. The teams that thrive in the new WNBA landscape will be the ones that treat elite players as partners rather than assets to be managed. Indiana has a choice to make, and the clock is ticking. They can adapt their approach, give Clark the autonomy and respect she's earned, and build a championship culture around her leadership. Or they can continue with the current management philosophy and watch their franchise players camp build a case for why systematic change is necessary. But here's what makes this situation so compelling from a meta-narrative perspective. Regardless of what Indiana does, Clark's situation is already changing the broader conversation. Other players are watching, other agents are taking notes. The precedent being set right now will influence how the entire next generation of WNBA stars approaches their careers. So when I say Clark just revealed why she can't stay in Indiana much longer, I'm not talking about a dramatic press conference or leaked interview. I'm talking about a pattern of actions, statements, and strategic positioning that tells a story louder than any official announcement could. The digital breadcrumbs are all there if you know how to read them. The question isn't whether change is coming, it's whether Indiana will be part of the solution or become a cautionary tale about what happens when organizations don't evolve with their stars. And for those of us following the WNBA metagame, this is exactly the kind of story that defines league evolution. Not just what happens on the court, but how power dynamics shift, how player agency develops, and how one superstar's situation can catalyze systematic transformation. What do you think? Are we witnessing the beginning of a new era in player empowerment, or is this just typical growing pains that will resolve itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and the conversations in our comment section often reveal insights I missed in my initial analysis. If this investigation opened your eyes to what's really happening behind the scenes, smash that like button and share this video with anyone who's been following Clark's journey. The story we're tracking here is bigger than one player or one team. It's about the future of women's professional basketball. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because this situation is far from over. As we get closer to the 2026 free agency bonanza, as the CBA negotiations intensify, and as Clark's career continues to evolve, there will be more digital breadcrumbs to follow, more dots to connect, and more stories that need telling. The revolution in women's basketball isn't coming, it's already here. And understanding how it's unfolding, one seemingly small moment at a time, is exactly why we dig deeper than the headlines. Until next time, keep reading the signals, keep connecting the dots, and keep questioning the narratives that everyone else accepts at face value. Because in the WNBA metagame, the most important stories are often the ones nobody wants you to notice.